Hi everyone, welcome to this webinar. This webinar is going to be about reports. As you know, in the last year or so, we've developed a few webinars about different topics of Geotic log. So today's webinar is about reports. So different kind of reports, so printing reports, script logs, associations, and so on. Reports are really important in every business. So it could be used internally for partners or even to send to the government. So it's quite important. So today's webinar is going to be similar to the other ones. So if you have any questions, just keep them to the end, and I'll be there to answer any of your questions, and so on. So we'll go through a few things. The reports are not easy. It's probably the least intuitive part of Geotic log. So I'm not pretending to show everything that are in those reports. There's tons of options, but it's important to know that the basics, so you can after that navigate by yourself and try to figure it out. Okay. Okay, so let's go to the first one. So the printing report. Um, As you know, also, since version 8.08 of Geotic log, it's now possible to add outcrop channels and drop points into your database. So all of these different types of data needs to have different profiles for printing because they have different attributes that are distinct. So this is why you'll have to do different profiles. So let's start with to show you how it works in a general way, just how to use it, and then we'll go into more detail about how to build your profile. So that's the main goal here, is to help you make your profile. Okay, so what we can do is you can choose the type of data that you have in here, DDH, outcrop channel, or drop points. I'm going to take DDH in this example. I'm going to take just the first drill hole, and I'll show you using one of these profiles that I already have done, how it might look like. Okay, so in the parameters here, you have the profile, the printer. Obviously, you can change printer. You can change the paper size, and which I'm not exactly sure why you would like to do that here, because it's going to be also defined in your profile. But anyway, it's here. And then you can do a preview. Okay, so I'll just show you a preview for now, and I will go after that to build a profile. So this is a typical report from Geotic log. So you have a title page that you can, and everything can be customized, right? So you can customize this the way you want. So you have a title page, and then there's two different types of reports really that you can make in here. So it could be in table format or in standard format. So I'll show you a little bit of difference with this preview because they're both included into this report. Okay, so this is the title page. You can have your logo and so on in here. So this is what we call the standard description. So you will have your lithology, alteration, mineralization, and all of them will be indentated. Okay, so you will have like different information in here indentated, and then you will have your assays into different columns afterwards. Okay, so this is the standard format. But okay, I'm just gonna move on. This. Okay, here I have put in just my downhole surveys as an annex, as an appendix. And then you have also the other format that is here. So this is a table format. So in table format, you will have all your information into different columns. So lithology is in one column, alteration is in one column, structure, and so on into different columns. Okay, so instead of having all the text just indented, like in the standard format, you'll have them in different columns. Okay, so that's just the basic, just to show you what we can do with those reports. Okay. All right, so I'm going to close this, and we're going to try to modify or create a new profile. Okay, so obviously you can print from here, and then you can print more than one survey at a time if you want to, because sometimes you have to do batch print, so you can select several of them and then print them. So that's not a problem. All right, so if you want to create a profile, well, if it's your first profile, there will be a bubble here saying this is your first profile. Would you like to use a wizard and so on? And then we'll ask you to click on that little pen there. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to press that little pen to just create a new profile. So this will brings us to a new window, as you can see here. So you will have all your different profiles that are in here. So in this one, I have two different profiles. I have demo one as being my default profile. So when I open the little printing page, it will normally use demo one as my default one. But if you want to create a new one, obviously there's new to create one. I would not suggest to use this because it's very complex to start from scratch a new profile. What I would do is I would use the wizard. And using the wizard, you'll be able to create the basics that you will be able to modify afterwards to customize it exactly the way you want. It's a lot simpler to use the wizard than just go from scratch. Okay, so let's do that. So let's start by the wizard. Okay, so in here, you will have to name your profile. So I'm just going to call it demo 2 because I already have two ones there. And this is what I meant by you will have your paper size already set up in your profile in here. So let's say we just use letter and it's going to be landscape. So that's fine. You have title page in here. Do you want to include or not a title page? In my case, I'm going to add one. And your description. So how do you want your description? That's exactly what I talked to you before. So you have standard format and table format. Standard format are the ones indentated, and table formats are the ones in column. So let's start with standard format. And then in additional pages, you can add some other content that you would like to put in appendices at the end. So it could be your photos, your downhole surveys, it could be your any table really that you have on Geotic. Okay, so you can put that as additional pages if you want to. In this example, I'm not going to put any, but you'll see it's fairly straightforward once you follow this. Also, you can include some QA/QC graphs to your profile. So you could, for example, add the standard graph in here. If you have oriented structure, you could add your zero net. And then you want to display the profile editor at the end to modify it and customize it exactly like you want. In this case, I'll say yes, so we can go and modify this thing afterwards. Okay, you press next. So now we're in the section title page. So what do we want to include in our title page? So do you want to include a coordinate system? And if so, which one of these coordinate systems do you want to display? So I'm going to use UTM zone 18 in my case for this. But if you had a local grid or something, you could just manage it from here. Okay. You can also include downhole surveys if you want to in your title page. But if you have many tests, maybe it's not such a good idea to put it in your title page. Maybe you want to put it in your appendix or your annex at the end of the document instead. Okay, so I'm just gonna skip this. Do you want to include assay average? So assay averages normally are your zones, basically. So the highlights of the high grades that you had and things like this. So maybe we want to include that in your title page. So if I'm looking back at the main zones that we had in that particular drill hole, we can go and see them straight away. So if you include assay averages, you can decide what kind of thickness. Do you want a true thickness or the core length that you have on this? You can add both if you want. Okay? And then what kind of columns you want that are associated with this assay average. For example, in this case, I'm just going to put AU. I don't really care about the other ones. It's just AU final and other things. So I'm just going to put AU for now. And summary in here, so include a summary of the table assay sample or So this is just if you want to have like statistics on how many samples were taken and so on in your drill hole. So we're going to include that so I can show you how it looks like afterwards. Okay, so now we're in the standard description part. So it's going to ask you how many indentation levels do you want to add. Okay, so it could be 2, 3, 6, or 8. It doesn't really matter. It's up to you. So this is customizable, like I said. Do you want to include magnetism, include RQD, include oriented structure in those descriptions or not? So this is up to you again. And do you want to include some assays in here? So if I choose to have some assays, it's going to ask me for from which table I want to take those assays from. And do I want to include the QAQC and the lab QAQC? In this case, I'm not going to include those. It's more for verification purposes and not really for my report, so I'm not going to include those. Okay. And then what do you want to add in those columns? Okay, so I'm going to add, for example, AU. So I want to know my results, right? I could have the date it was taken and so on, like depending on which column you had in your assay table. So depending on your assay titles, this is what you're finding in here. Okay, so I'm just going to add AU. I'm not really having other results for anything else, so I'm just going to use AU. Now, we mentioned that we wanted some QAQC graphs. Okay, so which graph do we want to have? Okay, so we're going to say, okay, I'm going to look for graphs for AU, and my reference will be standard 25, for example, and I want this to be sorted by date or by sample number. Let's say by sample number. And just like QAQC or the lab QAQC as well. Basically, it's the same options as when you're doing a QAQC graphs. Okay, so and then what is your confidence level? So it could be 2 and 3 standard deviation. Whoops, 2 and 3 standard deviation, for example. And do I want to include allowed codes and so on? So let's say yes. So you press finish. So now it just brought me to that editor. Okay, so this is how you modify and customize your data. Remember the first page of the wizard, it asked me, do you want to open the editor at the end? So that's what it did. Okay, so here we are. Okay, so these are the 3 different sections of my report. Okay, I could add new sections from here if I wanted to. So another QAQC graph, for example, or another title page for some reasons. It's possible to do this. But I can also just go on each of them, double click on them, or press the modify button afterwards. And this is the editor. Okay, and this is where you have tons and tons of options. Okay, so in here, these are just the information table of the drill hole, really. Okay, so if there's parts of this I don't want in my report, I can always delete them. For example, in this demo database, I don't have the lot. Okay, so I can just select on this and press delete. And this is just the title, and this is an automated field, so I'm just going to delete both of them. Okay. But it's also possible to change the font. It's possible to change the size of the text and everything here. Okay, so for example, here it says survey. I could change this, and I can change the type of data I have in here. I can change the size. For example, I'm going to put in 10. But you can change the color, the formatting, and so on. You can have styles of text, which I'm going to be changing in here. So for example, this is text. I'm going to modify this. So is this a default value? But you can have different styles of text if you wanted to. You can change the color, the font, the size, if you want it bold, and so on. Okay, so there's different options here for the text, and this will be applied to all of your document. Okay, so this is how it goes. Okay, so for each of these elements, it's possible to modify them. Okay, so you have database, text style, frame style. So if you want to have some frame around this element, for example, you could add a rectangle if you wanted to. Um, you could just leave it blank. Seriously, there's tons and tons of options in here. It's possible to move this also. So you just click the little gray square on the corner, and then you can just drag it. In this case, it is bound to the grid of the background grid in here. And this is because something is selected somewhere. I'm just looking for it. I don't know. Oh, here. Okay, so in here at the background, here you can see the grid. You can see a ruler also. These are the ruler. You have your different sections that you can move all together. So for example, if I'm clicking on a section, for example, this is a section, so I can just move this around and so on. Okay. Just maps, like I said, this is snapped to the grid, so that's why this is selected. But you can also snap to the text if you had to. The grid is 20 by 20, but you can change this if you want to make it bigger or whatever you want. Yep. There's also options to arrange things or to resize, to align to the left, the center, the right, the top, the middle, bottom, and so on. If you have overlapping things, you can just bring it to the front, to the back, forward, backwards, and so on. So you have different options in here. Okay. So everything can be modified. Okay. So for example, in here you have a grid. Okay, so these were just text. Okay. So different formats. Okay. For example, if I'm talking about the dates here, you have different options about formatting. You want a long format, short format, and so on. So you have a preview of how it's going to look like afterwards. Okay, so for the moment, there's no information about the drill. It's just how it's going to be displayed afterwards. Okay, you can change the number of decimals in some cases. So really, the options are different on different elements. Okay, if I'm looking at the grid in here, so you have different columns in this grid about the ASCII average, it's possible to change their width. So in here, I have width, and I have zone 4.39, 1.66, and so on. And AU is larger. So I can change the width in here just by double clicking and then typing a number. Okay, so that's not a problem. All right. Oops. It's also possible to modify the columns by clicking here, resize column, and then you can go one by one, and then you can just move them around to put them exactly the way you want. Okay, so that's possible. You can change the width of the lines, header, the horizontal lines, vertical lines, and so on in here. You can also put alternating colors. So if you have different zones, one is going to be, for example, if I put gray, so one is going to be light gray, the other one white, the other one light gray, so you can distinguish them if you want to. All right. It's also possible to add new elements. So in the section profile in here, you have, oh no, in the section profile, sorry, you have insert. Okay, so the insert here will allow you to add different things. Okay, so for example, if I wanted to add the logo of the company in here, I would click on, I want to select an image. It's going to ask me which image I want to put. Okay, so I'm just going to go and find the Geotic logo, for example. Okay. And then it's going to ask me where do I want to put this. So like you can see, there's areas where I'm not allowed to add photos. For example, in the grid, it's not possible. So let's put it in here. Okay, so I can just go and move it around. And again, if I want to stretch it, I can. Make sure you use the original image ratio. Otherwise, it's going to be all distorted and so on. Okay, so you can just do really what you want in here. It's possible to add some text. So you just click on the text after, and then you modify the text that you want to add. It's possible to, just gonna delete this, to insert the name of the company, the page number, uh, total number of pages. This is title, um, the name of the consultant, if you're a consultant, and so on. So there's different things, averages, if you want to have some database fields, uh, you can add some stack panels as well. If you want to add a stereonets, it's possible as well. So really, there's different things you can add to your um, to your reporting here. Okay, so so that's how it is. Okay, so once you have done this, okay, you can move to the second page. So this was just the title page, right? Really? Okay, so you can say, okay, I'm happy. I'm going to save this. I'm going to go to standard description, and I'm going to be doing the same. Okay, so the standard description, you see the indentation that I have in here. Okay, so for each of them, okay, for example, this is vein. So I have summary, title, description. This is mineralization. So mineralization, summary, title, description, and so on. Okay, so you can play and move around. If you're not happy with some of these things you don't want, for example, the structure, you can just delete these different elements for structure, for example, and it's going to be gone. Okay. We also ask to have some assay in here, so the assays are all in this section. Okay, so if I'm clicking in this section, you can see on the right side you have the grid. Okay, so you have the description and assay sample. So this is the width of these columns. Okay, but again, it's possible to change that using. Always looking for this. Okay, to remove some of these on with the weight of the container, and then you can just move things around in here. Okay. If you go into assay sample, it's also possible to change the column size, manually, or you can just go in here and assay sample. So if I click in here, you have the different columns in here that are corresponding to this. Okay, so it's possible to switch column. So if I'm moving to the left, see AU and length just switched around. It's possible to change the title as well. So maybe you don't want AU PPM. Maybe you want it written something else. It's possible to change the title of this as well. So this is this one. Is it header? Okay. So if I don't want AU PPM, but I just want to have AU, for example, okay, I can say, okay, I don't want this text to come from a column or a table or anything. I'm just going to go text, custom text, and I can just write gold, for example. Okay, so it's possible to change this title. And similarly, if you want to change those titles in here, you can just go assay title, and I can just say same similar in here text, and just say assay, for example. So it's just going to write ask instead at the very top. Okay. It's also possible to add new columns, new description, new tables in here. So it will add a column in here with whatever you're adding. Okay, so like I said, a lot and lots of options. You just need to play around a little bit with them, but it's possible to do it. QAQC graphs, in this case, there's not many options. Okay, so this is all done externally, so it will return what you need for your report. Okay. So once you're happy with your report, you can save this. You can exit this editor window. Save it again. And then we can have a look at how it looks like. Okay, so for example, for this particular one, I'm going to take demo 2. That's the one we just created. And we do preview.
Okay. All right. So in this case, this drill hole is not fully described, so you don't have information for all the fields, but it gives you an idea of how it looks like. So you have the logo like we inserted, and then you have your assay averages, so like just the main highlights of your drill hole. So you have the description, your assays, and so on in here. And if we go all the way to the end, you'll get your QA/QC graph, your standard graph that we've inserted at the end of your report. Okay, so it's possible to print this directly from here if you want to, and then you're ready to go. It's also possible to print several of these. So if you select a range of them, you can all print them at the same time. So you just press print, and then you can just assemble them or not, and then you can just print all of your drill hole at the same time. All right. So that's it for the printing reports. Now I want to switch to the strip logs because it's a different way of viewing your data in a graphical way. So I'm just going to start this. Okay, so when you press DDH, the strip log, you will have a window that is popping up. In this case, I already have a profile created. I'm just going to show you briefly how it looks like. So it's really like a graphical way, a visual way of seeing your drill hole. Okay, so it is very similar to the preview that you get in the description tab, except that you can be a lot more precise on what you want to see. And then on top of that, you can have text and have all your information. So in the case of the preview, it's not possible to have text. You can put your mouse over it and get some information, but that's pretty much it. So in this way, you can just visualize all of your data, and then you can create a profile exactly the way you want to display your information. Okay, so I'll go through this thing. Okay, so in this case, I have some assay, my lithology, and then structure, and I have RQD and different geophysical data at the end. Let's start and do a new one. Okay, so I'll just create. I'm not going to save this one. I haven't modified anything. So by default, you get a header, and then you get a depth column in here. Okay, so we're going to call these columns in here strips, and then you can add different information in those strips afterwards. Okay, so we're going to start with the header. Well, the page layout actually. So this is how we're going to call it. So let's call it strip 2. This is just a demo. So what are the kind of units you're going to be using? What kind of margin do you want for your paper? Do you want it to be a portrait, a landscape, and the size of your sheet? Okay. You can also change the scale that you want to display. So if you wanted to make it smaller or bigger, so you can change the scale that is displayed. So if I zoom out, you can see the extent of one page. So if I change this to 500, for example, you'll see that it's going to be a lot more cramped in here. Okay, so you can change this in your profile. Let's put 250 in this case. Also, the column header. The column headers are these ones here. Okay, so these ones, how high do you want them? So in this case, it says 3, so 3 centimeters. Do you want them to be displayed on each page? So when I'm going to be printing, this header with here would appear on top of this page or not. Okay, so it's up to you. And then the big header here, the of the whole report, can be edited in here with those those categories in here. Okay, so you can again put this big header on each of your pages if you put it to all pages, but also you can just have it on the first one and just keep the column header instead on the following pages. It's possible to add another layer header if you want to by clicking Add Header. It's not very useful, but if you need to add another header for some reason, you can just add another one. Okay, let's go and edit this big header in here. So you'll recognize the window here. It's very similar to the printing reports. Again, you can play around. You can just delete some some of the fields you don't need. It's possible also to insert new fields. It's possible to add your logo once again. It's possible to add text, lines, and so on. It's very, very similar to the printing report that we've seen already. So you can change your text style and the format and the sizing and so on of each of these things. Okay, so I'm not going to go too much into details of these because it's very similar to the previous one. Okay, but you can change this header. That was the main idea in here. Okay, but what is the most important part are all of these strips. So how do we do this? To add a strip, you will go in here and under strips, you press add, and then you have three types. So you have graduation, data, and description. Graduation is exactly like this one, so you just have a graduation, like it says. Data will be more graphical way of visualizing your data, but if you want to have text, you can also put your description also in one of the column. Okay. So let's start with an example. So I'm going to go with the main lithology in data. And which column do you want to display? So in this case, I'm going to be using the summary because I'm going to be using the color code that are related to those summaries. So I'm going to keep it like this. Keep it simple for now. I'm pressing OK. And then another page pops out. Okay, so how do you want to display your information? So do you want just color, fill? Do you want fill? This one will have like a black border here. All will not have it. Or do you just want the outline and so on? So you can change this. What is the color code that is associated with the summaries? In this case, it's simple little in this database. Do you want to have some text displayed on these strips? So maybe you want to add some text. So you can go there. In the case you want some text, it's going to ask you what is the text you want to be displayed over your color codes, basically. Okay, so in this case, I can just say the summary for an example, and you'll see what it does. And then the different lines. So for the depth, like between the different lithologies, you can change this. The text size for the summaries inside, but also for the depth. But in this case, depth is useless because we decided not to display the depth on this. Okay, so so you can change this. Okay, so let's press OK. You'll see another window will pop up. Okay, so that's normal. So the first window that popped in was just to decide what is the information I want to add within the strip. And the second window that pops is to add the strip itself. Okay, so if I'm going to content briefly here, this is the part we just described in the previous window before. Okay, so that's the content, but now we're just talking about the strip itself. Okay, so in the strip, now what is the header? It says main lithology. It's possible to change the header. So instead of writing main lithology, maybe you just want lithology. So you can just say, I want to put some custom text. Just put lithology instead, and so on. Okay. In this case, it's not very useful to have a grid. In the case of assays, it could. I'm not going to put any grid for this example. Okay. Lines. Again, there's not many lines involved in here. And the header, that's the part on top in here, the column header. How big do you want it to be? Do you want to put an angle to it? And you can change the style and so on and so on. Okay, so if I'm just pressing OK, see, I just changed it for lithology and I changed the size and changed the angle, so you can see this in here. And then for the strip itself, so you see the different color codes that corresponds to the different lithologies that I do have. And because I said I wanted to have the text of the summary, so that's why you see bedrock, and then you see the three. So these are my lithologies, right? So it's possible to do this like this. So if we're doing another example, and by the way, you can change the width of these columns. So for example, depth might be a little bit too large, so you can change the width in here. So let's say I want to have 2, it's going to be narrower. Okay. Um, and everything you're doing, you can modify afterwards. It's fairly easy to modify everything. Okay, so let's try to do now, instead of data, let's try to do a description. Again, about lithology, but it's the same idea for any table in Geotic. Um, okay, so this is description. So what do you want within your description? So in this case, by default, it says from to summary and description. So maybe you just want the description, so you can just play around using these arrow and remove text. Or if you want to have custom text, you can just put custom like your text there and then ship it on the other side and so on. Okay. I'm just going to leave it by default now, but just know that it's possible to change what's displayed or not. And then the font, like how big do you want the text to be, and the style and so on, and what is the header again that's going to be displayed in here, how big do you want it, which style and so on. Okay, I'm just going to leave it like this, and you'll see. Okay, um, so now I have the description. So I said I wanted the from, to, and then the summary, and then the description. So that's exactly like what is displayed in here. Okay, so I have my rock description on each single one there. All right. So that's for description. It's also possible to put different graphical ways of showing your thing. So for example, if you want to add your assays, in this case, we're going to leave it as data. I'm going to go to assay. I can use the AU final, that's fine. And in here, instead of saying I want to fill it, you have more options. So you can say, oh, I want bar graphs. And then again, you have different options. And what is your color code? So you can just say what is your color code, and that's fine. Now, here you can impose some limits. So you say, okay, what is my grade, for example, in here. So let's say it's from 0 to 10. Well, I know in this particular database, like the values are fairly high. So mines are probably between 0 and 40 gram tons of gold. But it's the same idea. Depending on what is the range that you're looking at, you can change this. Okay. Maybe you want to show also what are the values for for your assay. So just press text, and it's going to display on top of the bar graphs the different values for your AU final in this case. Now, what is the text you want to display? So you can just display AU final, but you can add other text if you wanted to. So it's possible to do this. For example, I could write grams per ton afterwards. Okay, so it's going to give me the number, but also the units after if I'm doing this. And then what is the font I want to be using? Because my axes are fairly small, I'm going to reduce this, and then I press OK. Again, the second window will pop up. So do you want a grid? In this case, maybe you want a grid. And how many divisions do you want? Okay, so the vertical divisions. So I said my values are between 0 and 40. So maybe I want to have 4 divisions and maybe 2 subdivision, and that's going to be enough. And the horizontal spacing in this case, not very useful, but you could play around with this. It would be possible to show your assays in logarithmic scales. I'm going to leave it like this for now, but just know that it's possible. So again, this is the content we have, the different lines. So the vertical divisions, maybe these are too thick. Maybe you want to change these, or just keep this as 2 and the subdivision as, yeah, okay, smaller, like this. And what is the font of the header that says assay? And then you can play around. Okay, so what do you see? You see bar graphs, and then you have your values your values in each samples in here. Okay, with the unit because I added the unit. Okay. And when we were talking about the vertical lines, so these are the vertical lines that we were talking about. Okay, and these are the subdivisions that you see in between and so on. Okay. Um, okay, so you can go on and play around with this. There's many options, but just know that you can add more strips. One more thing I want to show you before ending this webinar is to show you that it's possible to overlap two different informations in the same strip. So for example, um, okay, this is just an example, but if you want to have your RQD on top of your lithology, it would be possible to do this. So if you go to lithology and you say modify, so I'm going to modify this strip, okay, I'm going to go into content. So instead of having just lithology, I can add more content. Okay, so in this case, it has to be data because this is a data type. And then let's say we want to take the RQD. I know in real life people would not put RQD on top of lithology, but anyways, just for an example, to show you that you can put different information in the same strip. So by adding this, it's going to pop me up again this kind of window. In this case, I can put a curve on top of it, and my RQD goes from 0 to 100, so I'm going to change my limits. And well, okay, so really, I'm not going to display any text. So even though there's text here, nothing is going to be displayed. Um, and here, the line, by default, it's yellow, but you can change the color of your lines if you want to have it gray or whatever. So you can change the color of the gray of the line, and then your header in here. Oh no, this is the depth. Okay, so you don't need this. Okay, so I'm just gonna press OK, OK, and here you go. So you have your RQD on top of this, and then if you look at the very top in the header, it added the RQD scale in here, also from 0 to 100. So if you wanted to, you could add also vertical lines, and then you can play with the strip. Okay. So there's a lot of possibilities with this. It's very a visual way of looking at your data, and it's very practical. And then once your profile is done, don't forget to save it. And then once it's saved, you can use it for any of your drill holes. So if I'm just changing my drill hole, it's just going to display a new drill hole, but exactly with the same template. Okay, so it's very easy. And one last thing is here you can print your strip logs, but you can also batch print. So if you want to print a bunch of them at the same time, it's possible to do this. Oops, I'm just going to remove this one and then add more. So you can print several of them. You can use a PDF printer, and then you can go ahead and do all of them. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it. Just one comment maybe. For the moment, for the strip log, it's not possible to put your linearized photos in this within the strip logs. We're discussing this. Maybe in the future it's going to be available, but for the moment it's not. All right, I think that's it for today. Sorry it was a little bit longer than usual, but I think this section was really important for everyone. So if you have any questions, I'm going to be around, and otherwise, don't hesitate to just email me or at info@geotic.ca or just give me a call if you want to. Okay. All right.